key, the first point I want to share with you. Learning Torah is a dynamic process. It is not static. And if we stay in the static mode of learning Torah, then while we have gained data, we haven't really learned Torah. Torah is about change, about becoming a person of change and being willing to change. That said, I want to begin with a little game I call That's Me. For those of you in the Midwest region, you may have played this before. How many of you are Midwest, just so that I have a frame of reference? A good handful. Okay. I'm going to say a couple of statements. If it's true, then you respond with,
That's me.
Okay, you guys missed the cue there. Let's try that again. If I say something that's true, you're going to say,
That's me.
and if I say something that's not true, you're going to kind of just go, or nah, or you can pick anything that fits in there, as long as the language is, of course, as it should be. Number one, we'll start easy. I am excited to be a part of Yarchei Kala.
That's me.
Okay, that's an easy one. I'm so thrilled to be a part of NCSY with the opportunity to be the next generation of leadership of the Jewish people.
That's me.
I think for the most part we would agree on that. This is going to be the worst week ever. Not so true.
That's me.
Wow, always one in the crowd.
Goes out there, David.
Always one in the crowd. Next. I have gotten over the course of my life until this point into many verbal altercations and even at times some that are physical.
That's me.
The humility within us is starting to creep out and not to give us the oomph that of course we know everyone gets in verbal altercations. Some of us even get into physical ones. Next, getting angry is a normal human reaction.
That's me.
Totally normal. All human beings have this reaction, and it took no more than the third to fourth person in the world to have such a reaction. Come on in. We're out of chairs, which means someone should go grab a couple of extra chairs to make sure. Oh, we're not out of chairs yet? We've got one on each side? Great. Perfect. While you all grab a seat, I'm going to make a bracha on a cup of water. For those of you who aren't familiar with the custom of making a blessing, though most of you are, I just want to share one. This is a total side point, but I'm just thirsty, so I'm using it as an educational moment. In Judaism, we never squash the pleasures of life, ever. It is the exact opposite. We harness them. And on that end, when we say amen, which is the root of the word of faith, emunah, that sanctifies the fact that we are elevating this process. And I'm going to look like I'm teaching while my picture is being taken, so that when they put this in some type of imagery or on a slideshow, it will look ever so educational.
Amen.
In your new Chumashim, in your new Torahs that you got, this is a 4-volume version. Please take out volume number 1 and open to chapter 4, Perek Dalet. Right in the beginning, if you don't have it, you can share. Please open up your new Chumashim, volume 1, to Perek Dalet, which is the 4th Perek. We're going to briefly review the story of Cain and Abel, of Cain and Hevel, even though it's very well known. For some of you, there may be some new aspects to the learning here. There may be a new aspect to the story, things that you may not have learned before. Of course, when we learn, we recognize there's the written Torah, and then obviously there's also the oral traditions. Over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, I'll be asking you to participate by picking up on some nuanced language within the Torah, or to think outside of the box, to come up with some answers. But let's start with the basics. We know that in the beginning of time, God created Adam and God created Eve. And then they decided that they were going to have some kids. They worked out the family finances, built the big cardboard box in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. And they said, you know what? Time to have some little kids. And they did. And the Torah says in Pasuk Aleph that they had a child, and they named the kid Cain. Child number 1, his name is Cain. This is chapter 4, Perek Dalet, Pasuk Aleph, in the very first verse. And then they say, you know what? He's cute. Let's have another. She conceives, and they have another child whose name is Hevel. Child number 1 is Cain. Child number 2 is Hevel. That was verse 2. And in verse 2, it gives us their professions. Toward the end, it says, Vayhi Hevel ro'et son. Hevel was a shepherd. His job was to corral the sheep, to make sure they didn't wander off into dangerous places, such as off cliffs, or around areas where hyenas and other animals may have been prevalent. The Cain haya oved adama. Cain's job was to work the land. He was a farmer, making sure all the fruits grew. The corn was all nice and ripe. The tomatoes came out okay. The blueberries, the raspberries, whatever they were growing back in the day. Maybe wheat. Don't know. And then in chapter 3, things start to get a little bit dicey, because one of the kids, Cain, the elder, has an idea. He says, you know what? I'm really happy with this whole God thing. Cain is the first person ever born to a natural birth. Adam was made by miracle. God created him, snap of the fingers. Chava, how was she created? What does the Torah describe? By raise of hands. What does the Torah describe? Tell me your name, please. Elon, what's your last name?
Hirschfield.
Sideways. Elon Hirschfield, where are you from?
Rochester, New York.
Okay, great place. Go ahead. Please tell me, how was Eve created? How was Chava created?
She was created by Adam's spirit, like God taking Adam's spirit when he...
Right. Part of the rib that she was created from. And that's why the Torah says, Me'ish lukacha zos. She was taken from man, from the rib of man. That's why she earned the name of Isha, very similar, a derivative of the word Ish, which is a reference to Adam himself, the word man. There was no natural birth yet. The first conception, the first pregnancy in the human race was that of Cain, and therefore the first natural birth. He's feeling real appreciative. First guy ever to be born to natural cause. He says, you know what, I'm going to give some thanks to God. And in chapter 3, in chapter 4, verse 3, what does he do? Vayave Cain mipri ha'adama mincha laHashem. He says, you know what, I'm going to give thanks to God. I'm feeling good about it. The harvest has been good this year. He says, I'm going to give fruits of the land. Oh, next verse. Vehevel, gam hu mi bechorot sanu michel behen. He also was going to give something to God, and he picked from the finest of the sheep, the fattest of the flock, and he's going to sacrifice this and give it up to the Lord. And then what happened? Vayisha Hashem el hevel vel minchato. God listens to the wishes of the second hevel. He accepts his praise. Next pasuk, next verse, pasuk 5. We're in chapter 4, pasuk 5. Ve'el Cain ve'el minchato lo sha'a. Out of luck, seemingly God was only ready to say yes to one. Turns down the oldest child for the youngest. Hevel, the younger brother, the little guy who gets all of mommy's love, all of a sudden, his gift to God was accepted. But Cain, outright rejected. What's his emotional reaction? And I use the word emotional not because I'm putting the word in there, but this word is actually used by the Torah itself. And it says in verse 5, Vayichar l'Cain me'od, vayiplu panav. Who can give me a translation, please? Vayichar l'Cain me'od. What does the word vayichar mean? You can use your English translations there. What does the word vayichar mean? Can anybody figure it out? It's the second half of verse 5. So chapter 4, verse 5. What's that? Vayichar. And he was angered. Actually, in real Hebrew, the word vayichar means to flare up. Vayichar af, and his nostrils flared. That, of course, is an idea of anger, because we know when people make the angry face, their nostrils flare, and they are fuming angry. He was so angry that his gift wasn't accepted. So God says, hey, no big deal. Vayomer Hashem el Cain, lama chara lecha v'lama naflu fanecha. God says to Cain, please recognize, there's an open conversation now between God and Cain. There were no smoke screens. It's not like today where we don't have a direct connection to God. Not the same. We pray to him. We hear his messages silently. This was open conversation. Hey God, how are you? Booming from the clouds. Fine, son, how are you? Cain, how come you're so upset? Why? Lama naflu, and it says, V'lama naflu fanecha. Why is your countenance so sad? What's the big deal? All right, so we turned you down. Next time you'll be better. Next pasuk, pasuk Zayin, 7th pasuk. Halo im tetiv se'es, v'im lo se'tiv lefes achatas rovich, ve'lecha teshukaso, ve'atatim sholbo. Oh, you got some improvement to do. If you kick it up a notch or two, no problem. I'll be more than happy to accept your gift that you're offering me. Absolutely. You're not willing to kick it up a notch? Sorry. Take it as it is. You got to do your piece. You want me to accept your gift? I would love to. Well, you got to improve a little bit, you know. It's almost like those moments where you hand in an assignment that you know was subpar. Your teacher looks at the assignment, she looks at you, and she hands it back, and she's like, your work is better than this. This isn't you. You walk out of the room, you want to strangle the teacher. How dare you? I put effort into this. Okay, I only started last night at 10 o'clock. Anger. Sheer anger. So God says to him, no problem. It's really not a big deal. Because all you have to do is improve a little bit, and everything is going to be fine. Next verse, please follow along in the flow because there are some things that just make absolutely no sense. Next sentence. I'm going to translate this so you can read it in English. Vayomer Hashem, where are we? We are on verse 8. Vayomer Cain el Hevel. Cain says to Hevel, his brother Achiv, and then there's nothing that he says there because the verse continues. Vayihi b'hiosam b'sadeh. They were out in the field. Vayakom Cain el Hevel Achiv vayahargeu. And he gets up and he kills his brother. Again, here's the flow of the pasuk. And Cain says to Hevel, and they were in the field and he kills him. Okay, a blaring red alert. What's wrong with this pasuk? Did God have a little typo? Like, oops, I hit the backspace a few times. What's missing from the verse? What?
What he said.
Right. I'd like to tell you something. Anyway, so what I was talking about, there's a non sequitur. There's like a gap here in the data. It's as if the Torah left something out. We'll come back to this in a few minutes. Story continues. God says to Cain, hey, where's your brother? He's like, yo, I have no idea. Do I look like my brother's keeper? Hashomer achi anochi? Do you think that it's my job to babysit my little brother? All of a sudden, he's a little guy, gets everything. You want me to babysit him now? I don't know where he is. He's talking to God. It's not like he's having a passing conversation with someone that he's trying to pull the wool over their eyes. No, he's talking to God himself. What kind of answer is that? Very, very strange. Very strange. And then the Torah says, God gives him his consequence, and then right after the consequence, you can skip ahead a few verses to verse 13. Vayomer Cain el Hashem, God says to Hashem, Gadol avoni minaso. My sin is way too great to bear. I just can't handle it. Okay. Scene closes. Story's over. Here's what I want you to tell me. I want you to try to explain to me, I want you to try to ask a few very powerful questions here. Now, when we're asking questions in the Torah scripture, your job is to be analytical. Your job is to be critical of the text and say, hey, something's missing, as we pointed out with the verse, as you mentioned accurately, that something's missing from the verses. What are some of the logical things that don't make sense in this story? Feel free to take a moment to look through the sources yourself, scan through the first 10, 12, 13 verses, and let me know what stands out as just not making any sense in the story. Yeah, what's your name? You.
I'm Jake Berlin.
Jake Berlin, where are you from?
I'm from Detroit.
I've heard of that wonderful place. I've actually been there a couple times.
Well, two things.
Go ahead, number one.
Obviously, you pointed out that he was about to say something and it just didn't come out, like nothing was said.
Exactly.
And the other thing was that he was saying to God that he doesn't know where his brother was, even though it seems like he does, and he's saying it to God, who seems like he knows that God is omniscient and knows everything.
Now contrast that point, excellent. Contrast that with the last sentence that we learned. What was the last thing that he said after God gave him his consequence? Then he admitted, right? He admitted his sin.
Okay.
So now think about the contrast. 2 minutes ago you just told me you don't know where your brother is, and now you're saying my sin's too great to bear.
Yeah.
Pick one. Does God exist? Does God not exist?
Emotional. We were saying before, he seemed
Quite
like
emotional.
He seemed like a very good guy. He came up with that idea pretty much on his own to like
Seems
give
to be.
a gift to God, like, and be very like accepting. Like us, we just take it for granted a lot that we were born.
That we
And
do.
He's just like, I was born. I should totally give that to a guy that was born. He doesn't say anything about giving his mom a gift, but
Right.
he's giving a gift to like God. So
Excellent.
basically he just got really emotional over it and like was like, oh, I want to strangle that teacher, but like he actually let it overcome him and he almost
Right.
like took it out on someone else that he could.
Very good. Good. Ask more questions. Ask other questions. Be critical of. Oh, you're not done?
Yeah.
Rock
Is
it
it
out, go
possible that the reason that it didn't say that was like what he said, and the reason he said he doesn't know is similar to when God is asking like Adam, like, where are you? And it's basically not saying like where are you because he knows where he is.
You
He's
mean, is it a
basically saying-
rhetorical statement?
No, he's saying like I don't know where my brother is, as in I don't know what I was doing, like what I was thinking when I killed him. Like I don't know what
There is
overcome
such an
means,
approach
you
in the
know?
commentaries. That is one of the approaches mentioned in a packet that you'll be getting tomorrow, actually, of one of the commentaries, the Kli Yakar. It was a commentary from the 1500s, and he lived in the center of Poland. He wrote this commentary after a tragic story in his life. He made a commitment to God that if God would save him from a particular illness, he would write a commentary on the Torah. It's the story behind the Kli Yakar, the book that he wrote. A year later, thank God he survived, and he wrote a commentary within a year and published it within a year. And in there, he dealt with this particular question. And he gave a very similar approach to you, which is when he said, "I don't know where my brother is," he wasn't saying, "I don't know where he is. I know where he is. He's dead. I just killed him." But what he was saying is, I didn't realize, I didn't know. What did I not know about my brother? I did not know it was my responsibility to not kill him. Okay, that could be. Nice approach. Let's talk about problems. What problems do we have with the text? Yes, name.
So, Ami from Detroit.
Okay.
So, my
Travel
issue
in
is
packs,
that,
it seems.
my issue is that, Cain was, he's angry. It almost seems like he knew that for some reason a Bechor should have first rights. Bechor min ha-Bechorim. Like the very first of the firstborns is angry. There's got to be something more. So, that's kind of what throws me off. The first thing I heard was, he was angry. Why is he angry? He has no reason to be angry at this point because he doesn't know logistics of why, Bechor has rights first. So that's what bothers me.
Gotcha.
I don't
I
know.
hear you.
I don't know if that's a.
Why does the Bechor have the rights first?
No, I'm saying why does he recognize that?
Why does who
Why
recognize
does
it?
Cain recognize that?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, in the flow of the text, that doesn't strike me as a textual problem. There's something wrong with this story fundamentally.
Besides fact.
Thinking about the flow of events, the original conversation was between Cain and God, and then, yeah, Elon?
My question is actually about, I guess you could say, the bias of the text, because in the end of Pasuk when it says, Vayihi Hevel ro Eitzah Vayihi Cain Obed Chama, it mentions what Hevel does first, and he's the secondborn, versus what Cain does, which
Nice
is
catch.
the firstborn.
Nice
So
catch.
it's
The
kind of
Torah
like-
is very particular.
It's almost like it's creating a bias against Cain by mentioning him second, even though he was the firstborn.
Very
It's
interesting
kind of
catch. Nice.
binary.
Didn't even notice that. Nice catch. Good.
There you go, yeah.
Something more basic to the story. There's something wrong with the story. Think. This is not a passive process. There's something really wrong with the story. Yes?
So it says in I guess it's 3 and 4.
Mhm.
So Cain just brought the fruit of the ground, and Abel brought the firstlings of his flock and their choicest, so like the best ones.
Mhm.
It seems like Cain is just kind of jumping to conclusions. He's like, you didn't accept it, so I'm gonna kill my brother, and then he feels bad after that. But he's kind of jumping to conclusions. Did he not realize that Hevel's offering was a lot better, and that it was kind of just his own?
That's a
fault?
great question. Let me ask you another question, and I like the direction. I'm going to tweak what you're saying a little bit. What does Hevel's korban have anything to do with Cain? Can't God accept both if he wants? The fact that God doesn't accept Hevel's, does that have anything to do with whether or not Cain's was accepted? So what good does it do to kill? How does that solve any problems? I could understand. When I was 7 years old, my brother was 3 years older than me, took an aluminum bat. I was 7, he was 10. He took an aluminum bat, an all-out swing from a 10-year-old. That's not insignificant. An all-out swing, the bat caught my right eye, and I completely flattened down the ground. Blacked out. I wanted to kill the guy. Outright, I wanted to kill him. You hurt me, I hurt you. Right? Quid pro quo. But here, the crying wasn't Hevel versus Cain. Because who was the one who decided that Cain's offer wouldn't be accepted? God. What does that have to do with Hevel? His anger was completely misdirected.
How's he supposed to get back at God?
So, in my anger, I'll kill someone who has nothing to do with the crime.
You have anger, it's not completely rational. If you can't get back at who you believe is the exact perpetrator, you still have that emotional.
You are correct. You are correct. To answer the far majority of these questions that you're asking, I want to discuss the idea of anger, and I want to have the room do a brief exercise just with the person next to you. Just start in pairs at the end to make sure that it works in groups of 2. What I'd like you to do is starting in pairs, and if it ends up being a group of 3 at the corners or at the end, that's totally fine. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think with the person next to you, take about a minute, and I want you to think, why is it that we get angry when things don't go our way? What is the root of anger? What drives us? We know what things make us happy. Fine, we get that. Why is it that things make us angry? I know that sounds very basic, but I want you to approach this from a psychological perspective. What wiring goes on in our head? What wiring goes on in our head when we get angry? Why is it that human beings get angry? What is the root of the idea? Take a moment to speak among yourselves with your chavrusas, with your learning partners. We'll come back together in a minute.
It's like trying to look at people. Why is it that you want something? I deserve something. What's the basis of it? It's a question. I deserve something. It makes a lot of sense. It's
Okay, so all of you guys have an idea. Do you need more time? Using your hands as a minute's indicated. Do you need another minute or you're good? We're good? We got one more minute. Go ahead. Continue your conversations for one more minute.
Anger is an emotion that you can express it if you yell at people. Show that you're frustrated. You want.
Okay, let's come back together. Who can tell me what they think is a fantastic answer? I don't want mediocrity. Who thinks they have a fantastic answer? Lee, you're going to dislocate your shoulder if you stretch any higher. Go ahead, Lee. You'll switch arms and dislocate both. Because what?
Hashem wanted us to have different emotions and attribute them to different actions that might happen because
God wanted us to be able to feel anger.
Yeah, because Hashem.
So it's not necessarily that it is something rational, intellectual, but God gave us this emotion, rational or not, that when somebody slashes my tires, I fill with rage and want to murder.
Yes.
Fascinating, Lee. Fascinating. Not going to slash your tires. Yes, what's your name?
Noah.
Hello, Noah. Where are you from?
Here.
Here.
5 minutes away.
You live actually in the state of Connecticut?
In the
Yeah.
hotel.
You live in the hotel, like upstairs? You live upstairs and it's a 5-minute walk. Okay.
It's not a 5-minute walk. It's like 5
All right, let's give
miles.
Noah your undivided attention. Go ahead.
So a disagreement occurs, and I think Hashem might just want humans to be able to solve a disagreement by verbal discussion.
So are you
I
suggesting,
think disagreement would cause anger.
and what does anger yield? A solution?
I guess so.
So we need to figure out what is the core of anger, or in Hebrew it's called ka'as. What is the core? Sorry, you can't see. What is the root? What is the core of ka'as? I'm nervous about that. I'll tell you why. Because when I get angry, I am so unreasonable. And I know that. I am like a 4-year-old, and I have a 4-year-old, and he is completely unreasonable when he is angry at me. Just this morning in Chicago, right before I left, one of my kids was holding up a pillow as one of my other kids was running by, and sure enough, my other kid fell flat on his face and tripped over the pillow. Which was a great move. I'm not going to argue. It was a good move. I'm asking him. I agree. It was a great idea. And when I was 8, I probably did the same thing to my older siblings at the time. This was his twin. So the twin who fell on the floor, weeping, crying, smashed his knees on the hardwood floor. Come give me a hug. I give the kid a hug. And when he picks up his head, he had the kind look in his eyes of like, where is that kid? I'm going to kill him. I'm like, relax. And while I'm holding him back, I say to my other kid, was it an accident or on purpose? He said, no, I held it up so that he could jump over it, and he just didn't jump over it. Which, by the way, is a pretty good argument at your 8. Nevertheless, it wasn't one that flew very well with me. So I said, even if it's true that it wasn't your intention that he should fall and you were just creating an obstacle course for him, first of all, you should tell him that he's in an obstacle course, Aleph. And number 2 is you should apologize. He didn't want to apologize. In our house, we have a policy. You do something wrong, you have to apologize, or you can stay in your room until you apologize. It could last a day. I don't care how long it takes, you have to apologize. Guideline in our house. So I said, I'm sorry. You either have to apologize or go upstairs, your call. And that child of mine was so angry at me for putting my foot down as a parent. I don't care. That's my job. My job is to be a jerk sometimes. That's what you got to do. So he walks by me. He's like, huffing and puffing. And he's like, I'm like over here. He like walks this way as if that's going to reflect his all-out 8-year-old anger on me. That 8-year-old is incapable of making a good decision. And by the way, when we get angry, we're no different than little children. The emotional development of the human being goes in 4 stages. There's infant, child, adolescent, and adult. The infant kicks and screams, can't verbalize their feelings, and they say, I want what I want right now, and I don't care what's going on in my surroundings. My 2-year-old did that at 4 o'clock this morning when she woke up and wanted a hug. She did not care that I was comfortably resting under my down blanket in my 67-degree house. No. She did not care at all and proceeded to call my name for about 10 minutes straight until I actually recognized that I wasn't having a nightmare that someone was waking me up, but that it was actually real. I got out of bed, give pacifier rub on the back, good night, sweet dreams, love you, goodbye. Got back in my bed. She didn't care. That's infant. The child says, I don't care. And they show with their body language, and not even with their words necessarily, that they don't like you. What does an adolescent do? They tell you that they don't like you. I don't like you. Get away, Mom. Goodbye. You're annoying. Which, by the way, I don't suggest as a way to deal with your parents, and I'm not condoning it in any way by giving it as an example. And then there's the adult who's ever so level-headed and, well, you know what you did frustrated me, and I'm hoping that you can see the wrong of your ways and come around and repent for the things that you've done. I'm okay. I'm mature. I'm an adult. Cain got into the child mode. He was so angry. But in the moments of anger, we cannot make good decisions. I still need to hear, what is the core of kas? Other ideas that were discussed in your chavrusas, in your learning. Other ideas, yes?
Disrespect.
You were disrespected?
Yeah. Are you saying that I'm the one that's angry? Which one?
Well, what is the core of kas, that the person who's angry feels disrespected?
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah.
You disrespected me. Now, let's be very clear. I am the most important person in the world. Everybody in this room feels that about themselves at times. And if you do something against me, how dare you? Do you not recognize that I'm the greatest person in the world? See, we never say this out loud because it sounds immature. But now, imagine the deeper layer of conversation that Cain was having with Hevel. And Rashi picks up on this. Rashi, the famous commentary from France, lived in the 1100s, wrote the commentary on the bottom half of your page, which you can see here. The commentary of Rashi has over 200 commentaries on it. There's a book of commentaries on Rashi's commentary. A fantastically concise but deep author, giving tremendous insight into the human psychology and into the text of the Torah itself. What happened in that silent conversation between Cain and Hevel? Vayomer Cain el Hevel achiv. Tell me, what happened? What does Rashi say? He was trying to rear up Hevel so that he could have a reason to fight. What does the end of the pasuk say? That happened. He succeeded. He started some kind of conversation, turned out into a fight, and then he killed his brother. What was he doing? Rashi picks up on the little knetch in the language. He says, wait, something's missing in the verse. Rashi says, that can't be. Something's wrong. What was actually happening? It wasn't that he said any particular thing. It was that he said anything in order to incite. Anything in order to enhance the fight. So now, let's talk on a psychological level. What happened with Cain? God, you didn't accept my offering. Don't you know that I'm the most important person in the world? How dare you? And you know what? To vent my anger because I can't kill you, I'm going to kill my little brother, who is my competitor because you took his and not mine. Where's a rock? Finds a rock, doesn't know how to kill him. There hasn't been a murder yet. There only have been 2 other people, and patricide and matricide, to kill your parents, is a little worse than killing your brother. So he picks up a rock, doesn't know, Chazal points out, he didn't know where the soul exited from in the body. So he punctured him all over the body until he bled out. That's what the commentaries point out there. It was as if Cain was saying, hello, I'm the center of the world. You didn't do what I want? Too bad. I'm going to let my anger come out on someone because you disrespected me. Because you disrespected me. This is very good. And we're going to go still a level deeper, a layer deeper of this. And this is already deep psychological thinking. Yes, tell me your name, please.
Zach from Detroit.
Zach from Detroit also.
Yes.
Is anybody here not from Detroit if you're not from Midwest? We have a New Yorker. I mean a Connecticut person. Okay, great. Good. Hands down. Zach, go ahead.
I'm going to go for a loss.
Explain. What? Are you giving another one of these, or are you going deeper still?
Oh, I mean, it could be going deeper. But
Go ahead.
I was thinking more of like kind of like you mentioned, so it could be loss of respect in this case, or it could be loss of competition, or loss in a death matter. Just loss makes people angry.
Right. Is it in some cases it's because you disrespected me, and in some cases you're just outright angry for no particular reason. That's true. Yes.
I'm Noah from Detroit. Feeling of entitlement.
A feeling of entitlement. Is that the same as this?
Different.
A little different. Explain.
Because when from the time that you're a child, because it doesn't say how old Cain was, right?
Correct.
So you said the 4 stages.
Yes.
You don't when you're a toddler. Was that the
Child.
second
It's
one?
infant, child, adolescent.
So when you're a
adult.
child, you express through words and actions.
Right.
So it doesn't say what he said to Hevel, but
Good inference. Yeah.
yeah. So when you're an infant, you expect everything coming no matter what happens. So you're entitled to it. When
Right.
you're a child, you're still entitled to it, but you can still speak. So,
Right.
So that's.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I just got the 5. Is that a 5-minute signal?
It is a 5 minutes. Also, just very quick update. If you want to take a little bit more than 5 minutes, okay, don't kill me. Is after the year is concluded, you're going to take the opportunity to meet the advisors who are here to find out who you're going to be learning your chabura with tomorrow. So that way, as soon as this is done, you meet your advisor you're going to be learning with as part of your chabura. Then you're going to go to the base midrash, which is the room right next to the shul, clearly last base midrash, to find your makom Torah, which means basically place of Torah, to establish here's where we're going to go tomorrow morning in order to learn, and then spend the rest of the time learning together, either reviewing the material from tonight or preparing for tomorrow, getting to know each other. If you happen to be in David Princess Kabura, just go to the base midrash and find me. Jojo Freundel is actually going to be your Kabura person. Please enjoy the rest of your year.
Thank you.
You can take a little bit more time.
Okay. Let's see what happens. He just told me that I'm completely out of home. 5 minutes left. Let's take one more question, and then I'm going to take this a level deeper. Go ahead. What is it?
I was talking about how one of the things that drives actions is meaning, and when you see meaning behind that actions, you kind of tend to want to take them further and actually want to go with those because you're actually thinking about it. And you're like, that makes sense what I'm doing, But if you're really angry, I guess you don't really think about it, and it's just how he was it said he said something, but he didn't say anything. I was thinking that's sort of showing that's just showing even more that he didn't say anything, which means that he wasn't really thinking about it. He didn't want to talk it through. He just wanted to act on it before he.
Right. I mean, you would have to deal with the following question. Again, we'll learn this as if Chabru says. The following question we have to deal with is if that's the case, why did the Torah bother to say, and Cain said to Hevel, and then not say any words? Just say, and he killed him. He got up and he killed him. You'd have to play with the text to figure out that nuance. I hear what you're saying. I like the idea, but we're limited by the text in that way to make sure that it fits perfectly. So there is a religious undertone to this. I want you to think back to what just happened. The world was just created. Everything just came, yesh me'ayin, ex nihilo. There was nothing, and now there's everything. 7 days of creation. Adam's born. Chava is created from his rib. They cohabit, which if you think about intellectually, is a zygote being created from an egg that ovulates out of the ovary and one sperm cell and turns into an embryo, and miraculously 9 months later pulls out a child with perfectly developed limbs, a mental capacity, eyes that can see, cells that can feel, a tongue that can taste, a brain that can process data. It's a completely abnormal process. If I'm saying from a science perspective, there's nothing normal about creation. It was like clear as day that things came from God. It wasn't like today where, oh, well, we have a scientific explanation and Darwinism and evolution and we have carbon dating, which indicates the world is older than the Torah claims. It wasn't like that. There was no conspiracy theories. It was simple. God ran the world. There wasn't much to talk about. Could you imagine a piece of a seed goes in the ground and it grows a tree? You have to think about what they were. They didn't know anything. They didn't know science. They knew one thing. Crazy stuff happened and God was the one who did it. They didn't know anything else. So what happens when God doesn't accept something from you and you get angry? What an effect are you saying to God? What's God's reaction? Like, think about the dynamic now. Let's just talk, again, very, very deep level now. Now we're in deeper psychology. I'm angry. Why are you disrespected me? Let's take it deeper still. God, you're in charge. And you did not accept what I wanted. Now I'm angry. What am I saying about my relationship with God? Yeah?
I think the core of anger comes from insecurity. Meaning, like you were saying, like, I'm the most important person in the world, it's just the fact that, it's a sense of entitlement. The fact that someone else is. Yeah, it's your ego that's in the way. It's the fact that, you're being disrespected, and the fact that, it's like the fact, I don't know, how do we talk about it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm from Detroit.
Saving grace in this room is that you're from Detroit. Yes.
The core of anger is just lacking belief in God. If you fully trust in God, you'll never get angry.
Pitch right up the middle, swing, home run. I just want to say that there is Torah in Columbus. That much we know. God is in charge, and I can't accept it. When we say that God is in charge, and I can't accept it, think about this. Why am I getting angry? If you know your parent loves you, if you know that, then you don't really get angry when they punish you. When you're a kid, you do. But when you're an adult, you don't. Someone very close to me, I know the story very personally. They told a lie to their parent. They said they were somewhere where they weren't. Parents nailed them in the lie. This particular child got a 1-month consequence. They were not allowed to go to summer camp that summer. They were kept home from 30 plus days of summer fun in Camp Mosheva in Wild Rose, Wisconsin, because of one lie. And I know this story because it happened to my sibling. It happened to my brother. Now, if you know my parents, my mother grew up in Augusta, Georgia, total hick. Okay? My father grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, which is like totally a hick. Completely, my parents are rednecks through and through. I don't even know why I am like even not on a dairy farm right now. So if you lie to my mother, that does not work in the South. No. In the South, you got paddled. Things have changed. My parents have lost that side of their history. But you didn't lie to my mom. Now, I also lied once to my mother, which was just a dumb idea because I already knew the story about my brother from before. And my mother asked me, so how was it at that friend's house the other night, Phil? Now, brain cell number 1, hello, they know or they wouldn't be asking. I'm like, I didn't go. And my dad looks at me, he's like, I'm like, shoot. They grounded me for a month. No social activities with any friends, other than things that were absolutely required for school or, at the time, whatever youth organization I was working with. Nailed. Hello.
You asked so nicely. You have until 9 o'clock.
You're so sweet. Thank you. Now, in my heart of hearts, I wasn't angry with my parents. Because I knew very well that what they were doing was for my benefit. I was 17 at the time, 16, 17. Even at that age, I could sense that there was a bigger picture. Had I been angry at my parents, how dare you take my free time? Chutzpah, you can't take my time. The answer is, yes, they can, and they did, and they were right, and no, I don't lie anymore that often. What was happening with Cain and what explains the whole entire dynamic of what happened in this story, all the craziness that doesn't make sense, is, God, I can't accept the fact that you're in charge right now. Anger is so remarkably powerful in that it defines my lack of faith in God. Very, very well said. Tell me your name again. David nailed it on the, that was perfect. Hammer to the nail. That is exactly right. When people get angry, they cannot handle the fact that somebody else is in charge. The story of Cain and Hevel is not a story of brother rivalry alone. It's a story of faith, or lack of faith, as it relates to Cain. And it's the story of anger out of control. Unbridled anger led to the death of a person who had nothing to do with what happened. Hevel's korban, Hevel's sacrifice having been accepted, played zero role in Cain's sacrifice having been accepted. No link. And God even said to him, if you want me to accept it, fine. Improve, I'll take it. No problem. What's his reaction? He goes to find his brother in the field, picks up a rock, and just demolishes him into pieces. Anger is a remarkably powerful tool. And I want to share with you a beautiful Rambam. The Rambam, Maimonides, Rabbi Greenland just spoke about this, and he spoke about one of his primary books, which is referred to as the Mishnah Torah, written in Hebrew and written in the 1100s by the Rambam himself. The Rambam died in the year 1205. He lived for much of his life in Egypt, and he was the doctor to the Sultan at that time. Now the Rambam writes that there is a perfect link between two traits. He writes that there is a link between these two things are going to be equal. We have kas on the one side, which we spoke about as anger, and another language that he uses, which is called ga'ava. Who knows what ga'ava is, or gaiva as we call it colloquially? Does anybody know what ga'ava is? Huh? No, not quite. Self-centeredness. I don't know if centeredness is a word, but I just made it one. The Rambam writes that these two traits are inextricably bound. They are perfectly enmeshed. People who have a sense of self-pride beyond what it should be will always, always get angry because they can't help themselves. Because you just crossed the line with me, now I want to kill you. So the Rambam says, there's only two character traits under the sun that you should avoid like the plague. Ka'as and gaiva. These two alone. The Rambam, Maimonides, writes that these two things, you must avoid them entirely. How do you avoid kas? You have to go in an order. The only way to avoid kas is by losing your self-centeredness, but listen carefully because there's a subtlety here, is getting lost in your relationship with God to the point that you don't distinguish his punishments from his good things. The good things that God gives you are the same as the bad things because they're all for your benefit. And when God crosses that line with you and gives you a consequence, you're okay because you're not self-centered. You recognize that you're second in command, at least second in command. The language of one of my teachers, the world is not egocentric, it's theocentric. The world doesn't have me in the epicenter. I stand front and center and God surrounds me. No, the world is theocentric. God in the middle and me on the periphery. And when I can remove myself from that middle circle, when I could draw out of me the self-centeredness that I am entitled, it's me. How dare you? It's me. If I could get rid of that and recognize God wouldn't do that to me if it wasn't necessary. My parents wouldn't punish me if it wasn't necessary. It's for my growth. Why did my parents punish me? Because they were bored? Do you know what they had to do for a month with my brother? They could have thrown him to camp and left him alone. No parenting for a month? Trust me, that's awesome. It's amazing. They kept him home. It was a hard call for them because now they have to watch the kid. Send him off to camp. Okay, he lied. A month of me being punished. I got to watch my kid. Now. Yes, that is exactly right. Parents hate punishing their children. Hashem despises the need. God hates the thought of putting us through a challenge. The only saving grace is that it's for us. That's the whole message of Cain and Hevel. Stop with the self-centeredness. Pull yourself out of the middle. God is in the middle. He decides what's good for you. You don't like it? That's your problem. That's our perception that's wrong. Cain was thinking, how dare you? And God's like, I'm going to give you the tool now. Change. I'm telling you, it says it in the Torah. Please change. If you want to change, you can change. You don't want to change? What am I supposed to do? I'm not going to hold your hand. You're a big boy. You got to make your own decisions. At some point, you let go of the bike. The kid's got to fall off on his own before he learns to walk. They have to make mistakes. They have to fall along the way. So he says to Cain, I'm not accepting your korban. Why? Because I want you to get out of the middle. I want you to stop thinking that it's egocentric, that it's Cain-centric, that everything surrounds you. No, not everything surrounds you. God is in the middle. Cain is on the outskirts of that middle life of God. God makes the calls. The lesson of Cain and Hevel is get out of the middle. Get rid of the self-centeredness. By definition, you'll stop being angry. If a person wants to stop their anger, and now they're in the throes of anger and they say, don't get angry, don't get angry, don't get angry. That's like a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. It doesn't do anything, and you know that it doesn't do anything, because most people, when they get into that moment of chaos, of anger, they are completely unreasonable. They then have the intellectual capacity of a table. They can do nothing rational. They're slow. And in fact, the Gemara writes this. The Gemara in Chagiga, the Talmud. What a fascinating idea. The Talmud writes that a person who's angry, in his anger, he'll start like tearing money up in his anger. The Gemara says he's lost his mental faculties. We consider that person a shoteh, a person who has literally, they're within the framework of Jewish law, they're no longer considered responsible adults. In the moments of anger, you are as dumb as a wall. You can do nothing educational. Zero. You accomplish zero in moments of anger. Cain's mistake was a choice. God said, please change. And he said, no, thank you. I'd rather kill my brother, which is an irrational thing to do because he has nothing to do with this. This is the message of Cain and Hevel, to learn that it is an egocentric world only for those who choose, but a theocentric world for those who are sophisticated. I'd be more than happy to take questions at this point. I know a couple of you had them. I'm sorry for taking the floor for too long. Go ahead. What is your question?
You're saying gava, like self-centeredness. You're making it seem like it's so black and white, but isn't there some gray area? Like, how do you know how self-centered you should be, and how do you know, like, when you're trying to push it away so much that you're kind of losing your own self-esteem?
Beautiful, beautiful question. How do you know what's too self-centered? How do you know what's considered too self-centered? So I'll share with you one idea. This could be its own conversation, and we could stay longer. They just told me 2 minutes after they told me 5 minutes, and then told me 10 minutes again. So I don't really know. Let's see what time it is right now. All right, 8:58. Yes, 2 minutes. I don't know you that well, but in the last 45 minutes, I've heard a number of things from you. I know you're from Detroit. But in the last 45 minutes, I've learned a couple of things about you. One is that you're very articulate. You know how to express yourself. Now, I know that. The people in the room probably picked up on that also. I would venture to say that you knew that before you walked in here today. Probably true. Are you considered self-centered if you are cognizant of the fact that you have the skill of articulation? Is that like ego? Michael Jordan. Saw the video. I'm a Chicago guy. I watched the Bulls win 6 rings in 7 years. Michael Jordan has hit the buzzer beater so many times, it's obvious they're going to give him the ball. It's just obvious. So when they give him the ball, he probably feels a sense of ego, right? But at its root, there's a reason he got that ball. It's because he's very, very good at something, right? Is that ego? Or is that recognition of self-worth? This is the line in the sand in Judaism between someone who is confident and someone who is overconfident. I am confident in my skill sets because, listen carefully, I know where they came from. They all came from God. If you believe that it is you yourself who defined your skill of articulation, that's short-sighted and incorrect, and you're now in the category of those who are haughty. Within the framework of Jewish thought, it actually is a very clear line, but your question is excellent because when we think of self-centeredness, we're like, I know I'm good at something. Does that make me self-centered? No, it's a great question. But Jewish law says if you know what your skills are, that's not a crime, as long as you know where they come from. Right? I know what some of my skills are. I know what they are. I went into education because I felt and I know that I'm able to do things. Does that make me self-centered? Yeah, if I think that the only reason that I know how to do this and that is because I'm awesome. No, because we all have our own God-given talents in all the arenas in which we're good, whatever they may be. Whatever they may be. That's the line in the sand. If I say I'm good at something, but God gave it to me, good. I'm good at something because I'm awesome inherently, God bless you. You're just like Cain. That's the line in Hashkafa,
Yeah, it
in
can't
Jewish
be
law.
like God gave it to you and then
You could have
worked
enhanced it.
upon it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the core aspect of it can't be that you are just so awesome. Your DNA
You
is
gave
unique.
it to yourself.
That's
Yeah.
right. It's irrational. That's irrational. Yes, Rabbi. You got a Mr. Rogers shirt on. I took off my sweater. I was going to start singing It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Go ahead.
Phil, how did Cain know the concept of death?
How did he know the concept of death?
How could he? The fourth person alive. No one. Did anybody die before his act of murder?
I'll tell you how he knows that. By the way, you can answer this on your own. Just think about.
Adam was given punishment. Like,
No, not yet. Not yet. Maybe yet. Actually,
Yeah.
that's a machlokas rishonim. That's an argument in the commentaries because
You could also say it's
the
out of
layout of
chronological
Breshit may not be in
order.
chronological order, so it's very complex. That could be a different conversation. I'll tell you one reason briefly. We do have to go meet in the other room for a little bit. The one reason we know that is because they were allowed to eat the animals, and they knew that they had to kill the animals beforehand. So they knew that there was a concept of death. It was a pretty simplistic, cheap answer, but it may well be the case. Animals died. There was the circle of life. You guys have all watched The Lion King. There was a circle. Okay, so then animals would kill each other. The tiger would bite the head of the sheep, and all of a sudden he died. And then the animals stopped moving. Oh, things can stop moving? I want my brother to stop moving now. That's a great idea. We have to wrap up. It's been a pleasure learning with you. You guys are just Everybody